Morning, how are you?
How are you?
Good, how about you?
Good. Would you just, for the audience at home, state your names, please?
Duran Holder.
Dan Hope.
All right, gentlemen, floor is yours.
Well, first of all, thanks for taking the time to meet with us. What you see in front of you is a couple things that our department has discussed about hopefully having some action taken on these things. First item on there is increasing our personal days to at least more than the current one. The state does receive 6 per year, and I know that we kind of fall under the state with retirement and pension and things like that. So that was something we had been talking about, increasing the personal, at least 1 more or 2 more personal days. I know some cities do give their employees their birthday off, which could fall into that personal day. So that's, Dan, take the next one.
And going right along with that, the state gets 15 sick days per year, and we get 12. So just maybe see an increase in that.
Increased match for the 457, I believe currently it's 4%. Is that correct?
Yes.
It is 4%. 4% is the current match. So any more would help. Anything would be better than the current one now, even if it was a small marginal increase. Increase on the vacation longevity bonuses at 25 and 30. I believe all that is ceased over the last couple of years that just haven't been there. Dean can speak a little bit more on that. He's been here longer.
I started working with the city when I was 18, and I'm currently 45. So if I work until retirement age of 67, I'll never see another increase in my vacation time. And it would just be nice to see some type of longevity. A little bit. Yeah, and so.
Your recommendation or no?
Well, currently it's a quarter day per month, I believe, at the increment. Something like that, or a couple extra personal days, if you want to throw them in there at 25 and 30. But stopping at 20 when we have a 30-year retirement, to me, is a little strange. Like I said, after 20 years, there's nothing else for me to look forward to.
You look forward to us.
Yeah, right, that's true.
I guess kind of maybe start a new program of quarterly bonus for the employee of the quarter citywide. Even 250. That was just a number we threw in there. It could even be something I think you had said before, like gift cards or some type of monetary bonus of $100 or some type of recognition for being voted. I mean, I think it would be citywide. Your department head would nominate this person, and your department head, and so on. So then it come down to whomever to make that decision. So anything to kind of boost morale, I think would be a good tool to have.
And it could be announced in the newsletter, and it wouldn't necessarily have to be monetary. Once again, back to a personal day, some type of recognition would be pretty nice, I thought.
Yeah, so we're putting together a framework around an employee of the quarter or the month. We haven't gotten too deep into it, but that's something that we're working towards. At the moment, there isn't any. We didn't put anything forward in this budget for a bonus or something, but.
Okay.
Something that I believe was talked about early on was about the new GOV possibly with some type of fitness or exercise room to hopefully increase or promote better health. Better health comes with happier city employees, which cuts down on premiums with healthcare and so on. I know that these types of rooms are in other departments, the fire and police department have them. What a good way to brand new building to possibly put that in there too. City email to be allowed on personal cell phones for all city employees, just not department heads and whoever else.
I know for me personally, when Susan was not here, and I was needed to come to a meeting, I had been sent emails, and I can't get email on my phone. So there's a potential if I wasn't sitting at my desk, I wouldn't make the meeting. So that would, if I was able to get it on my phone, it would be a lot simpler.
So staff can get emails on their phone.
Mhm.
You just have to sign the policy, and you know, if you lose your phone, then we have the right to brick it.
I've heard, yeah.
But you should be able just to reach out to information services and get that
Okay.
put on your phone.
I was told no when I tried, but I'll try again.
We were told it was just department heads.
You're told no by information systems or by,
By my past director.
okay, go ahead and try again.
Okay.
And just go right and CC me.
Mhm.
I'm an Everett on that. We can go right to Bill with a request.
And
You
also,
approved that.
I think it would be beneficial for the code enforcement officers to also receive the email on their phone. Maybe not the entire office, but, I mean, it wouldn't hurt.
If you want to bring it up
Yeah.
to your team
Mhm.
and just see who's interested, and we can do it all in one fell swoop.
Okay.
If you guys want to work at home, please.
Not gonna email you at 10 o'clock.
Join the club.
Well, basically, yeah, well, I do that.
Yeah.
I already do, so.
And just going back to the weight room, that if and when that's in the program to be included. So I will advocate to keep that in there.
Sounds good.
The last thing on the list is to possibly take a little bit deeper look into the dental and vision coverage. I know we've talked about this the last couple of years and that it's not the easiest thing to do, but like I've said before and we've talked about it, you know, I've been in a couple different places with not as good health insurance as currently as offered here, where like I've never paid for a cleaning in any of those other programs, but here I pay for a cleaning every time, and a family of 5, that adds up. And I mean, I always look at it this way: if someone has a choice between, they know they have a cleaning coming up or a dentist appointment, but yet they have a car payment to make, which one are they going to do? Because they know they got to pay for a cleaning. They're probably going to skip the cleaning and pay the car payment. Obviously, that could result into some deeper issues down the road if they miss that cleaning. Now we're having to pay even more money to fix something that could have been prevented in just an easy checkup. It's not a lot of money, like personally, that I know. I mean, but it's still, I've never been anywhere that I've had to pay for cleanings every time. You know, maybe an X-ray here and there, but the cleanings have always been provided in the coverage. Can't say too much about the vision. Only my wife wears glasses. Yeah.
Tell us about it.
These are just readers, they cost $8, so I'm not complaining.
Yeah. But overall, the health insurance is very, very good. I mean, don't hear me wrong when I say that. It's just that the dental and the vision, I don't know if it could be better, but if it's something worth looking into, I know that's a concern from our department end.
We do have one other thing, but it didn't make it on the list, but it's probably as important or more important. So 20 or so years ago, when we gave up the longevity increase for a merit-based raise system, and now we really don't have a merit-based system because there's no reward. In other words, you can get the 2%, but if you are the best employee that you can be, the policy was supposed to be that you would actually get one, like a time and a half, so you would get 3% at a 2% raise. The negative portion is in there where you can get half of the raise or even potentially be fired because of your evaluation. But there's the incentive to be the best employee that you can be, and you receive a 2 just as the same as someone who's just an average employee. So we were like, and that was, when Colburn, Dykes, and Will Elliott died in a plane crash, that was how it was explained to us, that there was going to be that merit-based system, and that's why we gave up longevity. And 20 years later, we don't have a merit-based system. And I've lost out on 3 or 4 longevity raises, but that's another topic. But the merit-based system, I think, would be a way to reward employees. It would be something I'd like to see. So, and I think that's all we
That's all
have,
we
unless
have.
you guys have any questions.
Just
Just finish my notes here. Any questions?
just
Thank you, gentlemen. Yes.
The 457, we had looked at increasing that last year
Yeah.
and didn't find room to put it in the budget. With the scramble of this year's budget, we forgot. If we can come back to that,
Yeah, put
'cause
that
I
on,
think
would you put that on the list?
it definitely has
Yes.
value.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Okay.
We actually did cost it in finance, so I have the numbers.
You have it updated, great.
But it's not in there.
No, it's not in the budget, no.
Perfect.
Thanks for your time.
Okay,
Well,
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
I see you looking at the donuts.
Chief Colonel, there are some donuts over there.
I think that's bad with the
That's where they're going to stay.
Okay.
There's coffee over there too, though.
It didn't go over well with the personnel PD committee.
No. No. We're all trying to work off that winter weight and,
Are you doing the marathon?
yes,
She's close. She's close.
not gonna do it well, but I'm gonna do
Hey,
it.
Chief.
Hey, Colonel.
Stuff together. All right, we're back on. I have a few questions, so that this,
Absolutely.
these aren't all you.
Well, we're ready for those and others, should they come up. Should be interesting.
Here.
All right, well, our budget this year was, in total, 11 million. Our operational police services was approximately 800,000. In fact, it was 779,000, 100,000. And we were asked to and then successfully able to cut about 6% of that, which somewhere around 46,000 in total. And if you'd like, we can go right to those cuts. We can explain our process for that, or we can entertain other questions that you may have related to our total budget.
Well, I guess maybe first, what specific cuts did you make?
Sure, so we looked mainly towards our equipment line. The 434302. The colonel, along with Sergeant Elliott, were able to reach out to some of our vendors and prorate some of our annual contracts that we have with them.
Okay.
So that process would not begin to demand payment until January, halfway through our upcoming fiscal year.
Okay.
We're fortunate because our vendors operate on a calendar versus a fiscal cycle, so in this case, it weighed in our favor.
Okay.
This is a one-time process, though, and we will not be able to do that for next fiscal year.
Okay.
But we were able to see some savings there, which basically covered that 6%. Most of our contracts, though, we budget out essentially to the penny. If we know that we're working, say, with software for the functioning of our CAD RMS, if we get the quote from the vendor and that's what we budget for. So what you see in our presentation, we haven't added to that. We cover for certain hazards and things like that that occur throughout the year, breakage, damage, things like that. That's all right to the penny from, that's the quote that we get from our vendors. So we really didn't have too much room on any maintenance agreement contracts, any testing that we run. That's the quotes that you see are the quotes that we receive.
What pages?
Sorry, what page is what? 44.
44. Okay. Gotcha.
Now, we weren't, so we were responsible for 3 separate operational budgets. So we have police services, and as I explained, that's where we were able to find our 6%. But we also have communications and animal control. Essentially, we weren't able to make any cuts from those other 2. They are very, very small budgets. And we weren't able to find any savings there in order to contribute to the 6%.
Now, do you have any specific questions? I'm trying to find mine. Just give me a second. Thought I had this organized right.
Well, I'll just throw out one. So they talked a little bit about the restructuring of the communications department. I don't know if you wanted to elaborate on that.
Sure, so
I can jump in when needed.
why don't you start us off and I'll fill it?
Okay.
Or did you want me to start?
It doesn't matter. So the when did we put in the 4 supervisors?
The 4 supervisory positions were, well, our current setup involves 2 communications individuals per squad, and we have, of course, 4 squads. We also have an individual who is in charge of warrants and data entry as far as different requirements go for us to participate in police databases that go in-state and outside of the state. And then we have, that's our general setup. We have 1 floater. 2 years ago, we requested and added 4 individuals for supervisory capacity, and we were able to hire for 1, and we ended up losing that individual. But it worked well on the staff level. To that end.
Yeah, so they've had challenges trying to fill those 4 supervisor positions, and realizing that the need is greater for the dispatchers to put more bodies in the seats. So this plan, it does have a cost savings, I think, of about 50-ish, with putting in place a manager, a supervisor, and then 12, I believe, dispatchers versus the current 10 now.
That's 11.
11.
Yeah.
Okay. and this would include, if we go down this path, making them public safety dispatchers and dispatching fire as well, fire and EMS.
So the idea would be to be able to dispatch firsthand on a larger scale, a larger spectrum. There are often some communication gaps that occur on the public safety side when you're talking about police, fire, EMS response. So we are trying to close those gaps to be more efficient, a lot more efficient.
Well, I guess one situation would be when you call 911, sometimes they ask you police or fire.
Okay.
But now if you call 911, or at some point it would be, you would go to one city dispatcher to.
So 911 is a separate issue altogether.
Okay.
What we're talking about is taking over the responsibility in-house of dispatching public service, just the regular calls.
Gotcha.
Right now, as our communications setup stands, we are not able to take those 911 calls directly, and we are operating off of a county-wide system. Right now, the 911 center does dispatch fire and ambulance, but we are looking to transition over that responsibility to in-house. The 911 would still remain as is. It's not an inexpensive proposition to assume that.
And I think it requires state approval to take over 911.
Yeah.
Because we're no longer the 911, we were many years ago the 911 backup, correct?
Right.
And now we're, the sheriff's office is the 911 backup, so we don't even have the technology to be the 911 backup. But the way this would work, so the accusation at least is that there is a delay that happens in the management of fire and EMS dispatch in the existing structure.
So, what we're talking about will demand quite a bit of training and some time because you're talking about different skill sets. Although it would seem simple from a civilian standpoint, it's actually very technical. And we are today not set up to accommodate that process. We are only set up to accommodate law enforcement calls for service.
Could I ask a question?
Yes.
Basically, I'll ask the question for the people at home, but I think it's good for us to go through it. I'll give you the same scenario. Take me through the current methodology and take me to the future methodology of the call. I'm a resident who picks up the phone and dials 911 for a man with a gun next door. What happens currently?
So that phone call, whether you are from landline or from cell, goes to the 911 center, where someone will pick up and ask you what your emergency is. What's the nature of your emergency? The next thing they will ask you is where the emergency is. That will let them know whether they have to push the call, dispatch the call into county, and whether that is a multi-jurisdictional response, or whether it's MSP, or whether it's county. If it's inside the city limits, that call, a live call, gets transferred over to SPD. Once that handshake occurs, our dispatchers then repeat the questions asked, because we're not part of the live call. And then we will take that information and push it out over the radio for officers to respond.
Okay. And in the future?
Again, 911 would remain with where it is right now, because we don't have the mechanisms, we don't have the hardware or the software to receive that call.
Okay.
And that would have to be a decision that we would make moving forward as to whether or not we wanted to invest in that process for 911.
So it would essentially be the same
So the
Order.
initial 911 call would be the same, and then it would get pushed to our dispatch. If now we're talking about incorporating police and fire and ambulance together, so then that same 911 call would get pushed directly over to SPD dispatch. And those same questions would be asked, is it now police, fire, or ambulance? And then we'd process the call from that point forward.
So the difference would be when I call now and I say the guy's house next door is on fire. Current system is you call 911, what's your emergency, ambulance, police, or fire, and then they would dispatch fire currently.
That's correct.
In the future, they call, same call, where's the fire? It's in the city, you get it.
That's correct.
And we can elaborate more with Chief Hoppus, but I think the goal is to be able to control some of that and prioritize calls in a different way that aren't happening at the moment.
It adds an element of command and control that does not exist now in Chief Hoppus's role, but I think you're ready to be able to explain it. But it certainly benefits the citizens by it will definitely improve the fire and EMS service as far as the dispatch and the city residents.
When we receive a call now, we ask certain questions which will enable us to figure out what type of a response that we need to send to that particular location. And it's not just that location that we're concerned with either. It is other areas that may be affected by whatever activity is occurring. For example, if there is a school in session in an area, depending on the nature of the call, we may be in contact with the Board of Ed. But we would know that because they're within our jurisdiction and that's how we operate. I have no doubt that Chief Hoppus would say something similar on his end with regard to what types of resources respond, how many of them respond, what are the issues that they concern themselves with in their response, and then once they get on the scene.
No, we can handle that with Chief Hoppus. I was just
Sure.
saying,
Sure.
I just wanted to show the difference between, so that people understand what we're gonna be doing.
So I guess maybe one I would ask, a little bit different scenario, is an officer on the scene needs an ambulance or needs, something happens and so when he calls for fire or ambulance, what is that process now? Like if he asks the dispatcher,
It goes to 911, it goes to central
so
alarm.
it goes,
We call, the call gets made in reverse. So
But-
he would radio in, and
Yeah.
then we would call over there.
but in the future, it would be if that officer needed an ambulance dispatched,
It would come directly.
it would come directly in, instead of being rerouted around.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
But
From an operational side,
that raises a question in terms of how do they know to take that vehicle out of service at the 911 center?
They won't
Because it
manage
won't be
that.
available.
They wouldn't manage that anymore. And they don't now. They have dedicated fire and EMS dispatchers, and the 911 staff, the call takers are a different staff. They're in the same space, but they transfer the call internally from one. So there is a fire and EMS dispatcher or dispatchers, and there's so right now they auto forward to the sheriff's office for sheriff's dispatch or MSP.
I understand that part
or
of it.
police.
The part that I'm saying is, right now, they know where every piece of equipment is on the fire side.
The 911
At the nine-
dispatchers do not.
The fire dispatchers do.
The fire dispatchers do.
How will they know in the future?
They wouldn't be the fire dispatchers anymore. The fire dispatchers would
What
be
about for the county?
for other jurisdictions. Yeah, the other jurisdictions would.
If I could interject, I think what you're referring to is the jurisdictional boundaries of the fire department exceed
Correct.
the city limits.
Correct.
And so 911 wouldn't necessarily
Correct.
know that the piece of apparatus
Correct.
is not available.
Correct.
That would have to be coordinated. That's something I think would still have to be coordinated.
That could be an issue.
Because the fire
The
dispatch
fire dispatch
jurisdiction
overlap.
isn't the same as the city jurisdiction.
Right.
So it would have to be.
Some of
Well,
those
we can go over that
standards,
separately with the chief. That's not a,
from what I understand, some of those standards and protocols are already in place. You'd still have to send a response, just like we do if we get a multiple events happening within our jurisdiction. If we have one event that requires a significant presence, and we get something else that also requires a significant presence, which is not uncommon, we'd have to pull resources from other areas in the city, so it wouldn't be limited just to that sector. We still need a response. And if it goes beyond our capabilities, then we're asking for assistance from the surrounding jurisdictions.
I think what the, and I sort of understand it, if you have
It's a
a
good question.
fire alarm that's 2 miles outside the corporate limits, then the county still needs to know that that resource
Right.
is not available,
Mhm.
because
That's the
that's still
point.
part of their operational
Right.
jurisdiction. So I think that would have to be worked out.
From a police fire integration standpoint, yes, or a police fire EMS integration standpoint, yes, but from a citizen reporting standpoint, no, because then the Salisbury Fire District fire and EMS dispatch would be, I mean, it would be operated from the same center, meaning Salisbury Police Department headquarters, but the geographic jurisdiction for dispatch of fire and EMS assets would be that same location and those same staffers, our staff. So it's not as if a citizen would be confused about when they call. 911 would still just immediately transfer the call. Then the dispatcher who is already managing those fire and EMS assets is the Salisbury Fire and EMS dispatcher, so / police. So you see what I'm saying? Like, there wouldn't be from a citizen a citizen standpoint, it would be no different from a sheriff's deputy in that interstitial space who's making the reverse call essentially. I need EMS. That might be slightly
well,
different.
I'm thinking from a mutual aid list point of view.
Sure.
First due, second due, third due. That's what I'm coming from, so.
Like if it's a 2-alarm or a 3-alarm.
Well, if I may, one question we might ask, or one place we might look to is, we might want to talk to our friends in Sussex, is they actually have divided up separate, like Seaford, just little city of Seaford, it's got its own 911. I mean, you don't call them Sussex County Central 911. They not only dispatch all of their own fire, EMS, police, but they take the 911 call too. So Sussex 911 doesn't.
Does that too.
Rehoboth does that. So Sussex 911 doesn't even know that incident is happening and those assets are wherever they are. But somehow they've got to coordinate.
Well,
when there's,
that's my
so,
point.
Yeah, we gotta figure that out.
We need to map it so that we know that there's not a hole.
Right.
The last thing you want to do is call and say, you're up, can you take this? And we go, oh, sorry, we're already there, it's
Sure.
another call. So that's my only concern.
I understand.
Okay.
I think even, public safety together aside, this is a good move for our dispatchers. I checked it, it's $44,000 in savings.
I think what might not have been mentioned is all of the dispatchers would be cross-trained. So there would be a training element. They would be cross-trained to be able to dispatch fire, police, EMS.
For the police officer who's operating out in the street, this is a big benefit, because we have all of that communication happening now right there in the same room. And so operationally, for our citizens, they're gonna reap some benefits from that as well, especially when that call is made now directly back to,
Minutes can save somebody.
every
like,
time,
yeah.
every single time. So having that ability is going to improve our service delivery, it's gonna improve safety, not only for our officers, but for our citizens, which is really what we're all focused on.
Okay. Can we go through some of the questions, other questions? Overtime. I see overtime is gonna go from 341 to 431
Well,
in the budget.
again, we look at 3-year average, and we're traditionally at 450 470 towards the end of our budget year. And now you also have to take into consideration, there will be substantial expenditure for the folk festival coming up as well.
Okay. Because the last year was 341, the projection is 341 for the end of this year, is that correct?
The column for projection appears from Munis, but it doesn't, that we're not using it.
Okay,
Yeah.
In the past 3 years, we've been averaging about 430 over the past 3 fiscal years.
Okay.
It's pretty consistent with
that's that question.
So what we did, as Chief mentioned, we just look at the average expenses. We did add a projected amount additional for the folk festival over a 3-day period.
Understood.
Trying to cover that.
Have we captured all of the incremental costs associated with the folk festival as a one-timer?
As a one-timer?
Well, it's separate from the normal activity.
Sure. We are keeping track as we're going along of what is folk festival related that we're doing as sort of in kind at the moment. And we can let you, give
And
you
that should be
status.
bumped up against the offset of revenue, right? That we're gonna see from the folk festival.
So far, the city has mainly funded the folk festival manager.
Right.
And so far, most of the other folk festival expenses are outside of the city.
But it will be offset by the sponsors, some of the costs.
That's the goal, yeah.
So that, we need to do a autopsy of this after the first year.
Yeah.
So to make sure we capture the stuff as we're going. Okay. The next one, and I think I probably know the answer already. Workers' compensation showed that it was going from 378 to 459.
Yeah.
Is that the same thing where we don't project or we, but
No, what happens is we trued up at a workers' comp rate to be based on what it truly is. And in the past, they got smoothed out to an average. And so there was a non-clerical and a clerical average that took you to the premium amount. We used the actual factor, which meant that the fire and police was higher and all the others are lower. It takes you citywide to the same place.
So the other departments are
lower.
lower.
That's right.
That
It
makes
means
sense.
all it is trued up.
I got you. So this is based on the incident rate.
The actual workers' comp rate.
The actual workers'
Right.
comp rate.
Right.
Your IIR for each of for police, for fire, for
Exactly.
clerical. That's the
So
way it should be.
overall, we
That's
just
good.
treated it up. You'll see it comes
That's
out the
good.
same. Yeah.
Yeah, and when you look at the total, it makes sense.
Right.
But it didn't make sense.
No, I understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. That was good. Here's one, testing. It's a small number, but I get worried when I see the category. Testing went from $9,000 to $0. What does that mean?
We moved, actually, we kind of really shut down that account because what I found was that was for some psychological testing that we do for different units
okay.
within the department. And it just didn't fit because we had some psychological testing that was, other psychological testing for different things like hiring,
Yeah.
which is different than maybe a special
Yeah.
unit site.
Yeah.
So we put all of it under one account, all
Gotcha.
under the same account, and just did subcategories rather than have it spread throughout the budget, which really didn't make any sense to me.
Good.
So we just shut
Okay.
down the testing and moved that money to a different budget line.
Good. My favorite one, training. Training went from 117 to 76. Is that a similar situation where it falls into another category, or are we just cutting training?
No, can I get back with you on that one?
Sure.
Let me research
Yeah.
that, because there's a reason.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I didn't expect you to have all the answers right on the top of your head, but. Next one, another curious one. we, under gasoline, we have 189 grand and it's going down to 150. We're assuming the average, we got the average gasoline price and then it's gonna be lower this year? Is that what we're assuming?
Yeah, looking at our last 3-year average, there was traditionally a surplus that we had in that account, and knowing that the budget was gonna be tight this year, we just chopped what we thought we could live with
Okay.
out and hoping that the gas prices stay
Okay.
stay
Because
mad.
otherwise we're gonna have to get more bicycles because we're not approving any,
We've had,
budget
we've had
adjustment.
favorable variances for several years.
Okay. Which is good because that means
Been
that
the
we
bank,
have to
been the
surplus.
bank of
But now we're-
gasoline.
Yeah.
Well, some of it did, no, yeah, some of it could have gotten transferred into other lines.
40,000.
And the vehicles we already talked about. You know, we talked about that again and with the personnel guys. And it was interesting, they understood. But we had talked going back 4 years ago, my memory is still there. We talked about trying to get on that cycle where we're replacing a certain number so that we don't end up with 12 and then next year 3, and which means, and I explained it to the guys, that means you're gonna have to take some out a little bit longer in order to get it so that they fall into buckets for replacement. Are we getting close? Are we getting anywhere? Have we made any progress in that?
We've made a little progress, not as much as we forecasted.
Right.
We started out very robustly, of course, you know, with a lot of guidance from the administration and assistance from you. But as you know, these vehicles are very expensive. And when we are attempting to close some financial gaps, that's typically one of the places that we go to. So our timetable, our schedule for that is probably been extended out. I can say that very comfortably, actually, not probably, but has been extended out. We are definitely still on track. We haven't lost focus of staying up to date with our vehicles. And we haven't lost focus of bringing the take-home car to fruition either. But unfortunately, it's going to take us longer than we had originally forecasted.
What's been your opinion on the results so far for the ones that have been able to, we've been able to? There's some guys taking their cars home, the CID guys.
Right, so, well, we have a number of divisions within the agency where individuals that are assigned take vehicles home. CID is one, admin is another, tactical team members are another. People who live inside the city limits that's another group that we designate. So certainly we haven't met all of those needs, but we are getting there. And the idea would be to assign newest vehicles to those folks first, so that they are maintained for the longest period of time and they remain functional for the longest period of time. We haven't gotten there yet. We have 7 vehicles coming in slated for patrol that have not arrived. And I would say some of our frustration with this process is the time from order to actual implementation date. And we have looked at the equation from various sides. We've gone sole vendor for all the component pieces. We tried to jump onto other existing contracts. We've gone with just a straight vehicle purchase and then having all the other equipment purchased from different vendors and all arriving at the same time. And without fail, no matter what we do, we seem to end up towards the end of the budget year with the cars coming in instead of having them come in on the first half of the budget year. So that's a little bit problematic. We've been able to identify that one of the larger issues related to that process is when we're purchasing. So we're competing against other municipalities who are on a different fiscal cycle. They're on a calendar cycle versus the fiscal cycle that we're on, which kind of reduces the stock available for purchase when we want to purchase.
How much of the money for the 7 vehicles do they have?
What did they
Do
put
we
in
pay
CIP?
them? Do we pay them up front for the cars?
No.
We pay upon receipt?
We
Okay.
pay for the vehicles upon receipt,
I'm
and
just saying.
then we pay the vendor that.
They don't have
outfits
the money.
I'm just,
Right, I hear, I love it. It's,
Again,
Believe me.
I think for them, it just.
give
you
them
know,
a dollar
they
down
have-
and we pay them when they get here.
I think they have funding coming in throughout the course of the year that helps them from a purchasing power standpoint. So, and that has nothing to do with us. Other
No,
than
I'm
ours,
just-
when ours arrives, it probably is at a good time for them.
We don't pay anything for our vehicles until they arrive. The issue that we run into is that, working it out with purchasing to meet the city purchasing guidelines also, is that there's not a single vendor available that can do all the upfitting. Some vendors, aftermarket, they can do some of it, but then another vendor has to do another piece and another vendor has to do another piece. So we haven't been able to find that perfect match between between the person that sells the vehicle and can do all the upfitting.
And that stuff can't be done in parallel because they're each individually unique, so you gotta go in
Right.
order.
And technology is moving so fast, but particularly when it comes to in-car camera video and things like that, where we were able to save some money there, but it's one of those situations where it's proprietary to the vendor that has that particular technology.
Okay.
The question you had about training, could you repeat that question for me? I think I got an answer for you here.
Yeah, we went from $117,000 in training down to 76.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for you. I'm going to have to research that.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
I think that some of that was academy cost. Some of it because we had a larger group that we were putting in
Mhm.
throughout this current process that we're in. So some, although not much, because we did see an increase through our academy costs at Warwick and what we're paying per student now. But we're not projected to put as many through this year, so that's a piece of it. But
This is an increase, you're showing a decrease, right?
A decrease?
And yeah, there's, you may be comparing the revised budget. So if you see, the revised budget for 18 was 117, but the original budget was 59. So there was probably some encumbrances for some academy people
Yeah,
that got
I guess.
transferred to make it 117.
Yeah.
But the actual budget for 18 was 59. This year it's 76, so it's an
Yeah, that's-
increase of 17.
That's the part
Gotcha.
I wasn't quite
Okay.
understanding. The reason why.
Okay, that explains it.
Yeah, the reason why we're showing it's really an increase in the budget, it's really an increase, not a decrease. And the reason it's going from 56, I think it was, to 70 is because we broke our training down into our training is really comprised of 3 categories. One is academy cost, one is in-service training, the
Is that the
mandated
mandatory,
training.
is there mandatory training in
There is, for sergeants and below the rank of sergeant, there's 18 hours of mandatory in-service.
It's like gun,
Well, that's part of it. There's part of it, and there's also stuff that the state mandates that each year changes. That the
Gotcha.
officers, and there's also some specialty training if they're a detective or they're a tactical member. There's some specialty training that they keep them up to date with different things. So the reason the increase this year in that particular account is that as the chief had mentioned, our academy costs. The years past we'd encumbered some money from the year before that we
Mhm.
carried over. And this year, we didn't do that, we just put it right in the budget, and then we're tracking those 3 training lines separate, so we know exactly what we're spending, depending on what line it is. Whether it be college incentive, which also comes out of our training account, our college incentive that we offer for our
oh,
employees.
I didn't know that.
That's a
Okay.
piece. The in-service is a piece, and then the academy cost is a third piece. So when you look at all 3 of those together, it's expensive.
Gotcha. You don't have to get back to me then, that's fine.
That whole about the encumbrance, that threw me for a loop. I was trying because I knew we'd increased. So.
That's my question. Do you guys have any? Here? No?
I mean, I've already asked.
Okay. Good? I'm good.
all right.
They're good. Thank you for all you do.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
I'm gonna be here for the They usually those shots.
This is so much better when we get time. I believe the questions. It makes a big difference.
Well, it's the
More
gray
familiar.
box.
Can't ask questions if you haven't seen it.
Well, and that's what I'm saying, you can see this.
It is, we did. Thank you, Chief.
We take a 5
Thanks,
minute.
Dave.
Who's after clerk?
Is that okay? Yeah, we're gonna do
Council, and then,
council and clerk.
I just don't wanna do the mayor's office before, other than me is there.
No, no, no.
Okay.
We'll do the clerks and the council and we can yell at ourselves.
Thank you.
Okay.
Let me get my thing back up here because I just took it off.
What page?
It's under budget.
It is.
Yeah, give me let's get a
About
page number.
page 12 is clerk,
Now, which report is that on?
or that's council. This is the budget analysis.
Budget analysis report, mayor's proposed budget.
Next year, current year budget analysis,
All right. Page 12, you said?
12. Do you wanna do council first or
Doesn't matter.
clerk?
Whatever you like.
Okay, council first. As you can see, the computer is 1728. We didn't use anything out of that this year. We just kind of budgeted, I think, for one laptop every year to replace whatever needs replacing. Nobody has come forth, so anyway, that's budgeted for next year. The advertising remains about the same.
This year, we've had much more participation in meetings than we used to have.
Oh, yes. In outside meetings, yes, with LASMA and ESAM, and there'll be 4 of you going to MML.
So does this cover that?
Yes, it does. This past year, it's been very active as well. You know, we've used a lot more than what we have in. I think we're fine. I think
Okay.
you have enough budgeted there for travel and for the training, which the training is, you know, for your registrations. Travel is basically for, we do use LASMA for travel, not training. We charge that to travel, but the rest of the travel account pays for your mileage, and it should.
Okay. So we're essentially flat from last year, from this year. Proposed is essentially flat.
Yeah, the 8329.
Well, I'm looking at the total.
Okay, yes.
The travel, you had a $2,000 increase from the original budget.
Right.
So it's flat with the kind of, that's because we moved some from the training to travel.
Gotcha.
So
To cover.
So you have a couple $1,000 increase
Mhm.
between the two of them.
And considering the fact that the participation has gone up,
Yeah.
which is good.
Okay. Originally, though, last year, that $2,000 move to the food bank, I think we're at where we were, aren't we, Keith? Before the 2,000?
I was just going by the adopted budget. You can see it's at 840, and this year it's at 2,840.
Now, if I remember correctly,
But 840 would have never been acceptable.
Oh, no, I understand.
to
I was
them.
just saying.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
what did we decide to do on the Munis, it wasn't Munis, what's the other one?
Municode.
Yeah, Municode.
Yes, when I met with the mayor, he said
Right.
to, you know, budget it, so we are,
You're good.
we're good, we're
Oh,
using it.
fine. Fine,
Yes,
okay,
that was a 900, but
Yeah.
that's budgeted in the clerk's office.
Good.
So it was a 900 more a year. Normally, we pay them, 550.
but now we get all
But
the additional services.
now we have everything, and the staff, mainly Amanda, HCD, and across the street, attorney's office can use that to look at other municipalities in the United States codes.
Yeah. Well, it's especially
Yeah.
important
Yeah.
because Jim Peck's not around anymore.
Yeah,
except for
true.
1 day a week, and he used to be the,
Yeah.
They
but
can get-
seriously, the impact, people don't understand what the impact of
No,
him
of one
retiring.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a great
Do you know
resource.
Jim?
I call Jim all the time. I didn't, but he still
Oh,
answers
wow.
my emails.
Well, he will.
No,
He's
Probably
retired, but he's
works
not
on his days
retired.
off. Yeah.
He's the attorney he's an attorney that works for, and he was a town manager in Delmar.
Delmar, yeah, years
For
Yes,
ago.
he
years.
was.
Yeah.
And he works for Maryland Municipal League. And
There's never an inquiry he doesn't answer.
I called up one day and
Yeah,
asked for some ridiculous
Yeah, he's
thing.
even gone back.
It wasn't ridiculous, but I thought it would take a ton of time to get. And with the next day,
Mhm.
I had 9 ordinances that he just,
No
he knew
question
exactly
is
where it is.
unimportant or too small.
They're not going to be able to replace him
No.
easily.
No, you can't, and that's that's a shame because the resource was so good. But like he said to me, he said, look, you need something, just give me a call. But you hate to,
Yes.
He had a lot to say about tax differential and fire service.
oh
agreement,
yeah,
too.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so any questions about our, we think we're okay? Anybody see any issues with it? We're assuming, we're making an assumption that we're all gonna stay as active as we are.
Yeah, I'm gonna be probably a little more active this year.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna be busier, so.
Mhm.
Good.
Okay.
All right,
Clerks.
so clerks, I think we should cut it in half.
We don't spend much money, but our office account, just every year, like everybody's has dwindled, we just don't use that many actual supplies, but,
Yeah,
so we bumped that down, but now we're coming up with the, Municode, and that is $14.50 a year. It was $5.50 a year for what we had the last time, a few years ago. We increased the information we were able to get with them by actually having them serve us online, and we could access the code online. It helped all of the staff. I think everybody uses that rather than pulls the great big old red book out. So now we're increasing that by having staff, or anybody, you all can do it. You can look at a prior year's code. You can see what our code looked like, 3 years ago before we codified. You can search other municipalities in the United States that have Municode, and there are a lot of them who use Municode. And so the attorney's office now is Christine is on board. They love it. Amanda took a look. Susan took a look. All of the departments will be able to, copycat. I mean, there's no sense in reinventing the wheel if you can find somewhere that does it great, and it's going to save a lot. So in what we're giving up in one thing, we're getting in this. And
are you gonna have training for?
we had a great teleconference, and we could do it again in here,
Yeah,
with
I'm saying
staff.
that would be great to.
Yeah, they
so
were
we could-
super.
we could look at it.
We can. You all want to too? Okay,
Yeah.
we will set you up.
Well, I do.
Excellent.
I'll be like that.
Yes. We're very excited that we're we were able to see that, and, you know, it's basically not as much for us as it is everybody else, but, it's part of our printing account. It used to be printing paid for the codification. Now basically that money pays for the, you know, the electronic updates and the work that they do at Municode.
No, I think it
So,
sounds like that's worth it.
yes. And everything else, travel training is about the same. Diane and I take turns, and she's going next month to the conference in Norfolk. And no surprises, everything's
No?
just the same.
Any issues? Okay, we're good.
Thank you.
Next year, we'll look for some reductions because we got the new system. Should make us more efficient.
Okay.
There's always, yeah.
There's a downside to everything.
I remember, I always remember the things they say, well, this will make us more efficient and we'll be,
Oh,
yeah. Okay, show me the money. I think the fire department's here.
He was, coming again?
Yeah, let's,
What page are they on?
knew you were gonna ask that. But our astute chief financial officer will tell us
I'm
where
gonna
we're
let it find it. It's on page 62.
62.
As you type it in PDF. I don't know what the page number says. 62. They match this year.
Yeah, it does. That's why it's so
Pretty good.
important, though.
Yeah.
When you have to search, it goes right there.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Now, you have to tell me, you didn't plan that, that just accidentally happened.
Sometimes things just the moon and the stars line up.
Gentlemen, these two right here, hot seats.
Sounds great. How is everyone?
Hello, gentlemen.
Good. How you
Good
doing, Chief?
afternoon. Good to see you.
It's always good to be here. It's good to be seen, not viewed, is what I've been told.
That's true. That's true. I don't think we need introductions, but for the viewers at home, why don't you,
I'd be happy to introduce myself as Fire Chief Hoppus of City of Salisbury Fire Department. Deputy Chief John Tall.
so we have a short timer with us.
Yeah,
Aw.
we'll get to it.
He's put his time in.
Yeah.
He's put his time in. Okay. Floor is yours.
Okay, we weren't sure of the format of the event, but what we had planned on doing, if you had turned the time over to us, which you have, is going through our essential items request.
That's it.
And then looking at answering any questions council may have for us and helping council understand what those needs would be and how we might address them.
Perfect. Chief Scott has joined us. Hey, Darren.
Hello everyone.
How are you?
So the department made several what we had considered essential needs requests, and they're broken down into two categories. The first category would be operational accounts that needed to be adjusted based on historical need and usage, and additional needs based on our we need to manage the organization. So I'll go through those first. And the second category would be those items that we consider to be essential to advance the operations and to do things that we currently can't do, which are a little bit larger than the operational increases by far. So the first one was janitorial services account. The council has before it a request for janitorial services, and we had asked to increase that by $3,708, and that simply was to fund. Keith, do you need the number? I'm sorry. Do you need the account number?
No.
Okay. That was simply to fund an increase in our services. What we are not able to fund at this point is the maintenance of our vinyl flooring and carpeting. So they're not able to be stripped and waxed and shampooed at each of our 3 facilities. So basically what we're doing now is we're scraping together funds from some other account and trying to make that happen at some level. So this $3,708 was simply to increase the services for increase janitorial services to make sure that we're still maintaining our facilities in the appropriate way. And that wasn't able to be funded at this point.
Is that bid?
It is.
It would have to be competitive with it.
We have a contractor that has bid on all of these services, and basically what we've had to do is, based on the budget, we cafeteria plan and say, well, we need these services, we can't afford these services, kind of thing. So we have the ability to make that happen.
Okay.
The second account would have been fire prevention supplies. We had asked for an increase of $2,000 for fire prevention supplies. The fire prevention supplies and the increase that we were asking for was specifically targeted around smoke alarms and batteries. We have undertaken an initiative to improve the citizens' protection relating to smoke alarms in every home. And while we are given some from the state level and from contributions and donations from various private partnerships, which we're grateful for, we generally run short at the end of the year. And again, we scrape money together and try to figure out where we can do it. But we have several private partnerships that we've made: Ace Hardware, Lowe's, Home Depot, Mr. Jeff, and I can't remember Jeff's name for mail movers, Jeff Merritt. Has been such an advocate for us to help us get more of those, and we continue to use those partnerships, but we still find a need to improve to our efforts there.
Significant.
That's Minuteman.
Yeah, and Chief Tull whispered in my ear, which is why I'm glad he's here with me, that there has also, because of the new type of smoke alarms, with the 10-year, there's a significant increase in cost of those alarms too.
Right.
So.
Now, just for the public thing, those people who have central service, that doesn't apply to them, correct? 'Cause they have
Are you talking about a central alarm service?
Central alarm service.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. We're focused on the single 1- and 2-family detached dwellings, owner occupied. All of the rental occupied units, the landlord is responsible for that. However, we're not going to see someone be unsafe. If somebody has a significant need, we're going to reach out and try to make that happen.
Right, and I'm glad this is being taped, because they'll be able to see that. It's a good way of getting that message out.
I'm glad to have the message get out.
Okay.
Our third area for our increase was in turnout gear. This was funded, was able to be funded at the mayoral level. It's an increase of $80,000. We've reached our cycle where we have a significant increase in replacement needs over that 10-year expectancy. Chief Tull and Chief Scott and I are trying to develop a plan that will. What we did many years ago is we bought it all at one time, and
we talked about that.
It was a bigger expense, and but we have been able to, over the years, because of gear replacements and somebody damages a piece of equipment, piece of turnout gear, that we've actually been able to start staggering that a little bit, which is why it's only an $80,000 increase in this, which would have been our biggest year. So we've talked about several plans. One of which would be to create a sinking fund, whereby we ask to have budgeted annually X amount of dollars. And over a 10-year period, then at the end of the 10-year period, you can pay cash and replace all of the turnout gear. We've talked about that, and then we've also talked about trying to figure out a different way to get our firefighters on a replacement schedule without the challenge for us is we can do that very easily. Creating the mechanism's easy. It's preventing good within manufacturer year turnout gear from dying on the shelf.
Right.
So we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that we're not throwing away brand new sets of turnout gear because they've reached a 10-year life expectancy. That's the challenge. The easiest solution would have been the sinking fund solution, but the other challenge, the harder challenge, is figuring out how we can get our firefighters on a, we had talked about a 5-year rotationary basis, or whatever that rotation is, to decrease the impact on a 1-year or 2-year budget impact. We haven't quite mastered that one yet. it's easy for us to calculate the sinking fund cost, but that's our plan.
The difference is, we talked about it with vehicles and another, where you can stretch the life of the vehicle. This is a law.
Yeah.
10 years, it's gotta go.
Well, there is no question that
Right.
unless we're going to take a stance on jeopardizing firefighter safety,
No, you're not gonna do that.
which I don't think any of us would want to do, you're not stretching this time frame. It's a
No,
fixed. It's a
you
fixed.
can't. You can't do that.
Right.
And that's a dilemma. and
Sure.
I understand, we understand.
Yeah.
But it is an issue.
Well, we've been challenged by the mayor and the city administration to try to develop an alternative plan. And what does that look like? And we haven't totally solved the riddle yet, but we're working on it.
Yeah. Well, the sinking fund, if you could find a way to fund the sink.
Yeah, which is the challenge, because
Yeah,
you
it
still
is.
have to maintain
No,
your
it-
stuff
it-
moving forward,
What you're
plus
doing
fund
is
the
saying,
sinking fund.
I'm not using this now, but we're gonna put it in the budget as if it were coming
Yeah.
up in a cycle.
Yeah, and the good news is
That's a hard one.
if you can manage to, over a 10-year period, fund the sinking fund,
Oh,
then
yeah.
from that point forward, it's pay-go. It's
Right.
all cash on hand.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy to do. But it's the 10-year struggle that we have to endure.
And everybody's got the same problem.
Sure.
Even, it
Sure.
doesn't matter who you are, you've got the
So
same.
if you replace everything at once, what would the cost on that be?
$500,000.
So 50,000 a year is what you want to go into
Right.
the sinking fund.
On top of what we have to do to maintenance
Yeah.
the stuff moving forward annually.
Yeah.
Right? But in that meantime, the problem that you, in the sinking fund arrangement is, if you get to year 7, 8, and someone needs a gear replacement, oh, what do you do? Because
You have damage.
Yeah.
on 6 codes.
yeah, so there's no perfect solution,
Right,
except after the 10-year mark, then it becomes a perfect solution.
right.
But in the 0 to 10 is where you're
Yeah.
trying to manage it to the best of your ability.
That's a tough challenge. Okay, we get it.
Okay. The next one is in our cellular phone account. We had asked for a $2,970 increase to cover various cellular service issues, fire marshal increase, fire inspector, administrative stipends for cell phones. The administration was able to fund all but $1,000 of that, so we didn't quite hit the mark there. Everything else is in our, not everything else. The next category would be in our energy accounts or commodities accounts. We had asked for a $7,000 increase in electricity based on the consultant. Is it Mr. Anderson is the consultant? His recommendation, so finance and procurement had made the recommendation for us. That was funded, that $7,000 was funded plus an additional $2,000 on top of that. And it would be the same with our natural gas. We'd asked for a $7,000 increase based on that recommendation. That $7,000 was funded plus an additional $2,000.
Is that reflective there, or?
Alright. So I don't know if we have a misunderstanding that so the essential item got cataloged as 7, and that 2 of it was funded.
Okay, well, John, would you look that up real quick on Munis, please?
What are we looking at?
He's saying that only 2,000 got funded, not plus 2,000. So while Chief Tall's looking that up to verify, maybe, we could have just misread the
Okay.
report. So. In our capital, while Chief Tall's looking that up,
I guess maybe what would, when you're talking about the recommendation, what specific items in there is that we're looking at as far as the 7,000? Is it?
So you said 98.25.
yeah, I'm sorry, can you hold your question while I answer Keith's concern?
Sure.
Keith, if we're looking at the Munis report, which would be, in your case, it would be the mayoral budget request projection.
What page is it?
This be 23 on this report. I'm not sure what report you're looking at.
What's the account?
The account number would be, we're looking at electricity, so 556, 201, and 202.
Page 66.
Yeah, 66.
Yes, 66.
66.
All right, that's not going to give you the detail that I'm looking at in this report.
That's the detail, that's the other report, right?
So in this report, it shows current adjusted budget, projected actual, mayoral, and then percentage change. So in this, we had, current budget was 98,000. We had asked for 105 in our request, and it's funded at 107. That's where we got the +2. It's the same thing in the next year, current year. Yeah, it's the same thing. And we're okay with it, but we'd like to put it somewhere else. We'd asked for 105 in the essential items, and it's at 107. And it would be the same for natural gas. We'd asked for 55 in natural gas, and it's at 57.
Okay, so we have a difference in terminology. Normally, if it's in the budget, in your requested budget, so if you had it at 105, we added 2,000 as an essential item. So you requested 105 and you got 2 more. That's how you got the 107.
Okay, I will believe what you say because I trust you.
Yeah, we only added 2. So somehow the essential items should have only been for 2 if we.
Would we have put the essential item in the budget, or would that have come somewhere else? Because
It must have been that you put part of the essential item in. You had to have include if you requested 105.
request.
Yeah.
I can tell you what we requested based on our internal documents.
Sure. Because the adjustment was only for 2. What's good is you got what you needed in total.
So we had, if we look at our, yeah, we had made a request of 105.
Yeah.
But that was our request, 105. An increase of $7,000.
It's just not the essential items should have just been for 2 if that's what if you wanted to.
Essential items would have been for 7, because that's what the increase was.
Yeah. But we just have a problem with our terminology because essential item means it's what you couldn't fund in your budget, not the increase over last year.
Okay, and that's probably true, but everything that's reflected in our essential items request would have shown what was adopted in 18, what is requested in 19, and what the difference is, plus or minus. That's all I would say. I don't know.
That's what you were. I'm just saying citywide. That's not the definition of essential item.
I love being unique.
Yep. All right, so we're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm good.
So if he's, he's got the one item there, the cell phone. So do we take from above and beyond what he, or we
Yeah, he's
just-
got what he wanted. I think that's what he's saying. With that 2,
You got the 2.
I think that's what.
Well, no, he's saying he got
I got
2 more, in total 4 more.
Yeah, the recommendation from the consultant was, in this case, in electricity, $105,000 total.
Oh, so you got 2 extra.
So you got 2
Yeah.
extra.
That's
Four
what-
between
okay.
the two.
Four between both of those accounts.
Okay, so we could take 4 out.
Take 4 out.
I wouldn't take it out, I'd transfer it to another account.
Smart
And we
guy.
put it up.
That's what you would do.
This is the man you have to talk to
Listen,
now. He's in
it doesn't hurt to try.
Well,
What's that?
that's towards something else that we can talk about that we
I'm kicking you from now
need to
on.
address.
When they fund more, I'm kicking you.
I'm gonna.
Just go.
I thought that's what we talked about, Chief, sorry. We'll never bring up any extra again.
By the time you're done, you're not gonna have any extra.
No, you're right, you're right. All right, so are we good there?
It was honorable.
Yeah, we're good.
That's honest. All right. So our capital accounts, we had asked for an increase or a decrease in our existing leases based on eliminating some of those leases. That was obviously funded, approved at the right rate. Our computer hardware account was requested that.
Wait, was that, okay, that's one of my questions.
Go ahead, sir.
So was the leases,
Existing leases.
existing leases?
Yes, went down by $253,903.
Okay, that answers that question. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Computer hardware account on the recommendation of our internal, our information services systems, IT. They had made a recommendation and told us to budget 1,100. We did. I think it was funded.
Yep.
And it was. And our computer software for that one terminal was funded at $325. The only,
It wasn't an essential item, because it was in the budget.
Gotcha,
and that's why it's on there, right?
gotcha.
We had also made a request, this is in the 240/40 lines for volunteer workers' comp, 25,920. You'll see that, it looks like it's been removed, I'm not sure, but looking at that anyway. It's funded in our munis reports,
Exactly.
okay?
So it didn't need to be above and beyond what was in the budget, which is what this essential item was.
Got it.
Yep. So we're good, it's in there.
So all, that does it for all of the fire department's operating accounts, the pluses and minuses in those accounts. Questions from council? Having heard none, I'll move on to our.
No.
Try.
I got a couple. You've answered a couple of them.
Okay.
556913, what's that?
That's a capital account.
556914. Let's find it real quick. It's,
You said
fire
913?
Fire inspection. It's that 100,000. You're probably asking where it went, where that 100,000 went.
That's a good question.
That was that was the county fee last year that we had in transition. That we had the county continue services to finish out last year. Not necessary this year.
Okay. We talked about the leases, which answers that other question. And according to the budget that I saw, and I just want to verify what we're saying, it was $100,000 for volleys.
That was the proposed stipend.
But it was 80. It's down to 80.
It's been decreased to 80, yeah.
So it's 20 lower.
Yes.
And they, let me get my notes. So they gave us a list of what they've done in the past for each of the stations.
They being the volunteers?
Right.
Okay.
Have we covered what they can't do anymore because they don't have their money? Have we covered that in our budget? Where the funds that they used to put towards, that they're not gonna have now, they're having 20,000 less than they did. Are they now, do we have what they covered with that in the budget?
Close that, yes. Workers' comp, yes. No.
Well, second page, the other page.
The bottom two now.
Because the inference was that if they continue to use whatever surplus they had,
Is this the same as yours?
then after, it's gonna be gone,
We continue with that.
LoSAP is funded fully by the city.
okay?
Workers' comp. is
Workers' comp is,
Okay?
Funded, that's showing a reduction. And now it's only 40.
yeah, the third bullet, well, I'm working off a PowerPoint that I was just
Yeah,
presented.
look at this one.
That's what we got.
All right, so the operations funding of 50 per station that's what we're reduced by 10,000 per station, or from 100 to 80, is the recommended from the mayor's office.
There are 3 pages.
Yeah, and their training, our training budget was only reduced by travel, so,
No vehicle.
and the vehicles, the answer would be no. So one of the problems that we're facing, that they're facing is, prior to the loss of the county's fund for volunteers, for our volunteers, they had agreed to make a lease contribution for one of our fire engines at $107,000 a year. That was based on their receiving $105,000, $106,000 a year from the county. That money doesn't exist anymore. And so while they're able to they made last year's payment, they'll make this year's payment. The question that I have is whether they'll be financially able to make next year's payment. Next year being, next year.
19.
Yeah, 19.
That's my question. That's my question.
So what I haven't done, I've received the invoice for this year from finance for their this year's lease payment. So I'm going to approach them being the Station 16 volunteers today. I meet with them 4 o'clock to take their stipend from FY18, whatever the balance of the stipend is that they're due, and offset that lease payment by that much. So instead of the city writing their check to them for their stipend, and then turn around and writing a check back to the city for a lease payment, I'm trying to work through all of that. But right now, I don't have a high confidence level that next year it's going to, obviously they'll have $40,000 because that's what you're currently budgeting it at.
It would be a hit, it's of course, it's assumed at this time, the 103 you see for the lease payment, it's in the budget as revenue.
This year?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for 19.
Yeah.
For 19. For 19.
Oh, for 19, oh, okay.
But are you saying that you're not confident in FY
It goes
Yeah,
to
in
4,
19 they
we're
can't?
still 99,607 short.
Well, so help me make sure that I'm good, Keith, because I may be getting dates and times mixed up. We're making a payment right now.
For FY18.
That is FY18's payment,
Yes.
correct?
That's right.
Okay,
The year we're in now.
Yeah, so we're doing the FY19 budget,
yep.
and that would be yep, the one that we're talking about.
Yep. That would be my only concern.
Mine too. That's why I asked.
It's possible, I don't have their financials sitting in front of me. It's possible they could do the 19 payment as well, but it
Didn't sound like that to
It-
me. Did it sound like
they'll
that
have
to you?
some,
I mean,
They use the word next year, but we don't know
We
what
don't
that means,
know.
like whether that means next year after 20, after 19, and then so that therefore 20, or
I'm
whether
gonna tell
they
you
meant this year.
it's FY19. That'd be my fear, to be honest. $103,607. So let's fold that.
Okay.
If council would like, when I meet with them this afternoon, I will quantify that.
Yeah, I think we need to know that before
Even a
we-
partial, like maybe if they couldn't do the full amount, what would be the amount they could do?
Sure. Because they have reached out and tried to find some donations and some other, alternative funding sources as well. So they're working hard on their end. We know that they'll have an Amos fund contribution, but that's $17,000 or so. It's not a lot of money. But, it'll depend on how much they have in their coffers to begin with. Because right now, we've been dipping into their coffers with zero revenue from what they had anticipated.
All right, well, that's an open issue. We've got to resolve that issue.
Alternatively, no, never mind. I'll save that comment. I'll reserve that comment.
Any other issues relative to the,
I think this was the main concern that I had, was knowing that they had made these commitments, but, at the time that they made the commitments, they weren't expecting to have the rug pulled out from under them. And as a county taxpayer, that's something that really frustrates me. I mean, it was wrong.
and, well, I guess now's a good time to just bring up another issue.
So they paid 2 years.
I'm sorry.
This was year 2.
We had a long discussion, I can remember having a discussion as early as 2.5, 3 years ago about staffing on the equipment. And we had talked about, and we had made an effort, and we actually funded positions to ride four full instead of riding 3. And that's not all good intentions, we did it. Now, my understanding is that we're not riding 3, we're still riding 3,
That's our minimum.
but we're still riding 3.
If we can, we ride 4.
What percentage of the time are we riding 4?
Chief of Operations, Scott.
Very few.
Very little.
Hardly ever unless a volunteer shows up.
Well, that's our goal. Our goal is to, if when we can, have our volunteers that add staffing. As council recall, that 4-year staffing plan that I had presented to council, I guess it would have been FY17 now. Which leads me into the next part of our essential items request. The biggest part of that was our year 3 of that staffing request. So year 3 would, if funded, year 3 would reopen Station 2 on a daytime, Monday through Friday perspective. Year 4 opens up Station 2 24/7, 365. So you have 3 staff stations with career folks, and it is at 4, right? No,
Not following.
still in 3. So,
2 years out.
but again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to encourage volunteerism to increase our staffing to that magic 4 number as best we can. If people take off, that puts us at 3. If we're fully staffed and everybody's off, we can be at 4. It's just part of the minimum staffing standard.
My concern, and it's my concern, is that the volunteer service as a whole is struggling to get people in, and it's not getting any better.
Nope.
Regardless, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter the reason, but you can tell by the response, by the number of repeat sirens, 7 calls, 3 calls out, and it's an issue. And I'm not sure we can bank on having that support on a long-term basis. I might be wrong, but I think, and I think that we have to find a way to guarantee our citizens that they're going to be protected. That's my opinion. I also know that we can't do this by just going and adding $400,000, $500,000 to the budget.
Right.
So it's got to be a combined effort of what can we swap, what can we do, and then what can we afford to add to get us to that point. I'm not comfortable personally with the situation that we're in. And it's something that, and I don't have an answer. I don't. I wish I could, but I don't have an answer. So that's something that I'd like to have an ongoing discussion about, and I'd like to have you guys come back and look at it and say, all right, can we add 1, and how are we gonna get there? Are there things that we can do differently? Are there operationally things that we could do differently? What if we did, well, I'm not gonna, I can be here all night, we can do what ifs, but that's what you guys need to do, because we thought we had a resolution, and it's gotten, we haven't gotten there. So I'm asking you to go back and look at that.
The concept with the 4-person minimum was applied during 2012 to 2014 when we were fortunate enough to have the SAFER 12 additional bodies that was funded through SAFER.
Right.
When that came to an end, we were fortunate that we were able to hire a couple of them to stay on. but it wasn't enough to maintain the 4-person minimum on the equipment.
Yeah.
Last year, when we came forward and offered up a staffing plan that was talking about over the next 5 years hiring so many people, we were able to get the first year done, in which consolidated the day workstations, opened up Station 1 because that was a need because of the events that surrounded the volunteers at Station 1. But as a result, it closed or took the duty crew out of Station 2. One of the reasons why we struggle keeping 4 on the equipment now is anytime there's extra people. So if we had at 16 and 1, we had 4 people on an engine, and then a volunteer showed up that was willing to ride, we would take 1 from each unit and open Station 2 back up, which is now putting us at the minimum of 3 people, but it's putting a 3rd capital fire engine
On the road.
up in service.
Right.
And we're trying to do that 24 hours a day. If we can't get it done during the day, we try to focus at night, because during the day we have some administrative staff in the building that we can get another unit staffed and on the street if we have to. But at nighttime, we're dealing with just an engine and a truck staffed, and then 3 medic units. So that's one of the big hurdles we face with not being able to keep 4 people on those units.
But it does increase the staffing profile from 2 staffed units to 3.
Yeah.
Even though, I mean,
Yeah, even though you're riding short.
Right.
I understand that. You know, I had asked the personnel guys about how the program was working on the EMS with the hospital to try to
Swift.
eliminate.
Swift.
And they said it's working great.
Fantastic.
It is great.
Because my thought was that, hey, maybe we put another one of the, put 2 teams out. Does that reduce enough on the EMS side to take some of the pressure off, so you could take some of the EMS guys and put them on the trucks?
Yeah.
But they said it's so low now, it wouldn't be prudent to
Right.
put another unit on. I thought maybe that would be a solution, but we've got to find a way. The additional piece on the street is very important. But you guys have both been there.
Yeah.
You know, it's not easy when you get 3 guys on a truck.
Yeah.
It's not optimum for sure.
Well,
You know?
we agree, it's just, but we
It's just how do you
also
get there?
understand it's a very expensive proposition. And, you know, one of the reasons why we took the approach that we did in 17 to make it a 4 to 5 year plan was that we understood that if we came to council and said, hey, by the way, I need $2.3 million, can you give it to me?
Yeah.
You know, it just, you know, it's just part of that. You know, we understand our fiscal responsibility as well, and we're trying to work within the parameters that are set forth. One of the things that I think it's, you know, as long as and we have the administration's support, we're going after the SAFER grant again.
Mm-hmm.
We just keep our fingers crossed and our toes crossed to hope that if we could do that. Now there's a financial match to that. It's, you know, but it's not what we're. It would get us to where we could step, but again, it's about, you know, we're trying to find those alternative sources and that alternative means of doing so, and we're Chief Tall explained so very well that we're expanding the resources we have to their maximum capacity in order to provide the service ability that we can.
Yeah.
Even if it's not optimum, that's what we're.
Now, and understand, it's not a criticism.
No,
It's
not
just
at all.
that from a practical safety point of view and a service point of view, we should be at a certain level, and we know that we're struggling to find a way to get there.
Yeah.
But we need to get there, and let's just keep working as hard as we can to try to find the ways that we can accomplish what our goal was. And please don't take it as a criticism. It's not meant to be that.
Not at all.
But okay.
So the rest of the essential items request, the first item revolves around what we were just talking about. We had requested to fund year 3 of our four-year staffing plan. That would have been a hit to the budget of $231,000. Obviously, that hasn't not been able to be funded. The next item on the Price is Right, if you will, is we had presented to the mayor, and I think our employees had also presented to the mayor's office, what we've labeled a career development plan or program, which is a restructuring of our pay and benefits system, or pay system more than anything. That was not able to, I'm not sure how much of it, if anything, was funded.
Part of it got in there.
Yeah.
It got in there.
I'm not aware if it is.
Yeah, the mayor had proposed a new structure, a new comp plan.
We saw that in the budget booklet, but we don't know what that means monetarily.
I can tell you, monetarily, what it meant to the budget, but I just have to pull it up.
Okay.
Because we talked about that this morning.
70,000 was it?
In the budget, it says, looks like $70,000.
That's about right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if we're reading the category right, it said something about career or something.
Comp plan adjustment.
Comp plan adjustment, is that
That's
right?
good, you're good, yes.
Okay.
That's it.
It's adding a different grade, it's changing that whole.
Um,
Everybody goes up.
It was step changes, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, adding a couple step
Yeah.
grades, yeah.
All right, so the next one would have been a merit increase for our office manager. The mayor was able to fund that. It was a very small increase. The next one would have been a position reclassification for our office associate. The mayor was able to fund that. And then the final thing that we had asked for in our essential items was the SWIFT, or Mobile Integrated Healthcare person's position. But it was not funded, and it was not funded on purpose because we've received a grant, and we're still grant funding that position. As long as we can grant fund it, we're in good shape. That's all I had as it relates to the department's essential items request.
Okay, questions? Mine have all been answered. Artie, you okay? Here?
He answered mine.
Okay. Thank you for what you do. As I told the personnel guys, you guys are on the front line, and you guys put your lives on the line every day, and we appreciate that. The unfortunate piece of what we're dealing with is we're not where we want to be, and we got to get there. And how are we going to do that in the most efficient manner possible? So I know you've done your homework. It's obvious you have, and you've answered my questions, but I would ask you to go back and get me one fireman, if you can. See if you can. And then we'll talk about it and see what we can do on it. But we've got to keep prodding and going along. So, but thank you. We appreciate it. I think. All right.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Get you that one. Look at that chair. There's a reason why nobody was sitting in it. You left me to sit there.
Special chair.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
Yeah, let's get rid of that chair.
It looks